It's a real pleasure to be, I can say now confidently, back in Madison. I was in the line earlier and someone said, is this the first time you've ever been to Wisconsin? And I said, well, to Madison. And I said, well, I've been to Eau Claire. Does that count? I actually thought it was a suburb. But then as I got to the front of the line, apologies to all those I skipped in the line, I ran into Scott Anderson. You all know Scott Anderson, right? Yes. Where's Scott? That's a wonderful friend and theological colleague, especially in ecumenical work over the years. And I remember that I'd been with the Wisconsin State Council of Churches some years ago. So I've been here lots. I'm just back home. And I want to say thanks to the sisters at the Holy Wisdom Monastery for their hospitality. I spent a wonderful evening there last night. What a great place. I can come back and really spend some time there. I want to thank them for their hospitality. And of course I want to thank Rabbi Renee Bauer for this really kind invitation from Rabbi Renee and from the board of IC for being there. And I'm really honored. I've been honored to sit at the table with the family and friends of Clark Lloyd to hear about him and to hear about Martin Beal, two who have been so much a part of your work here in these past years. Now, I'm a preacher, and I've been preaching for a very long time, more than it might appear, a very long time. So I'm accustomed to having a text, a biblical text, but you're not getting one today. Because I'm not preaching in the basement of a church or the fellowship hall of a church, but I'm not preaching a sermon on Sunday morning. And I was given a text, in a sense, by the leadership of your council and asked to talk about quite a number of things, and that's what I'm going to do. They said Black Lives Matter, and the new civil rights movement, and the fight for 15. They wanted to hear some reflections on those things. Yes. They wanted to hear a little bit about some of the work in D.C. and especially around the visit of the Pope and some of what happened there with Senate cafeteria workers, federal contract workers. So I said I'd say a little bit about that as well. And then also something about how you sustain yourself in this over years of struggle against forces that will not relent. Don't we know that? Now in fact, that question was asked last night as some of the workers from Fight for 15, and I see a few of them here now. Shout out yourselves again. But that very question was asked, and so I'll say a little bit about that too. Why it will take me 30 minutes to do that, I don't know, but so let's get right to it. I'm going to assume that this is not a gathering in which Black Lives Matter, that phrase, is subjected to attempts to convert it or to broaden it to all lives matter. Am I right about that? Right. This is not the introductory class. This is the advanced class. Good. Now I know I can say just about anything I want to say. Which, by the way, is one of the great things about the Riverside Church. It's the first time I've been in a congregation where you can say anything on a Sunday morning, and people hear it. They have a context and an appreciation even for hearing it. And I'm just here. This is like Riverside, Wisconsin. So listen to this. Ryan Coogler invited J. Cole on the chancel of the Riverside Church. He interviewed Ryan Coogler, J. Coogler, on the chancel of the Riverside Church after Harry Belafonte spoke. This was at a Martin Luther King Day event just a week ago. Now you have to be versed in the civil rights movement and Black Lives Matter and hip-hop and rap and contemporary cinema to fully appreciate the cultural and social meaning of what I just said. Anybody here get it all? Not really a test, but we got one brother who says he does. Now, you know Harry Belafonte. If you're old enough, you know he began as an entertainer. And I need to get Mary back up here to sing this for me. Daylight come and she wanna go home. We can, you know, right? Harry Belafonte. And you know that well beyond that, he became heavily involved in the civil rights movement. And he formed a deep and lasting friendship with Martin Luther King Jr., investing and supporting and marching and speaking and getting arrested in support of the movement, putting his body in harm's way among the many who did so. And he's remained committed to changing structures that operate in our nation at every level to oppress, deny, and exploit black and brown people, women, and the poor of every color. By the way, I've pretty much stopped using race because we know there is no such thing in reality. Only the socially constructed only the socially constructed fiction that is itself a tool of oppression. Amen. As Belafonte began his presentation, he gave thanks to the Riverside Church, and these are his words, for the many years it has opened its holy doors. Write that down, hold on to it, I'm coming back later. For the many years it has opened its holy doors to speak on behalf of justice for workers, for international communities under assault, for blacks and women and gays. And I'm honored to work at that church and in that tradition. So you know Harry Belafonte. You know who Ryan Coogler is? He's the director of Fruitvale Station. Does that help?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. And he's also the director of the more recent movie, still in theaters, Creed. Anybody who doesn't know who he is, you ought to know now. Right? Creed is what? The 18th Rocky movie? With an African-American actor, Michael B. Jordan. Not Michael Jordan, not Michael. Playing the Rocky part, Sylvester Stallone, now an aging trainer. But Fruitvale Station tells the story of Oscar Grant. That's a name you haven't heard if you haven't seen that movie or don't pay close attention to some of the brutality that takes place in our nation. On January 1st, 2009, Oscar Grant III, unarmed and lying face down on a subway platform in Oakland, California, was shot in the back by a white Bay Area rapid transit police officer. Before then, since then, there have been too many deaths, too many killings, some would say murders of young African American children, teenagers, young adults, and we know better than to exclude women from the victims of these killings: Natasha McKenna, Tanisha Anderson, Sandra Bland. And that almost none of the policemen who pulled those triggers have been prosecuted, much less incarcerated for their actions. So Ryan Coogler is the interview. J. Cole is talking about how he's been through life numb. He's a rapper. Numb, disconnected from even social media, avoiding the relentless stream of horrific news. He hears something about a black man strangled to death by police, but he turns away from the story, never even hears the name Eric Garner, doesn't want to deal with it, doesn't want to see the video relentlessly looped on TV over and over after his death. And then one time, some days later, he's caught off guard and he sees a report from Ferguson on the murder of Michael Brown. His words: hands held up, facing the police, shot to death, left to die in streets too dangerous for his kind of citizen, his brand of humanity. It broke him down. He cried. He said of the experience, I put myself in his shoes. Write that down too. Open holy doors. Put myself in his shoes. Listening to J. Cole, Ryan Coogler remembered in this interview when Fruitvale Station premiered and he was asked by the studio to provide the names of family members and friends for whom complimentary seats would be held. He said the list was short and it caught him up and off guard because most of his friends were either locked up or dead. Boys from the block he grew up with. That's the reality that gave birth to the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's important to say, I've been talking about all these men, that movement, that phrase, is the founding work of 3 women. Did you know that? Yes. Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opa Tamani. They used the hashtag Black Lives Matter on social media in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman. They were instrumental then in organizing street demonstrations following the deaths in 2014 of Eric Garner and Michael Brown. Black Lives Matter. That's where we are today, but it's only a part of the story. Lucila Ramirez was making $8.30 an hour when I met her in 2011 as the Good Jobs Nation federal contract workers began the first of 9 strikes in federally owned buildings in Washington, D.C. The Reagan Building, largest federal building in D.C. You see how I got that out? I just said I slipped it real fast. The Reagan Building. Proud of myself. I didn't say the whole name. I just slipped in the last part of it. I was turning a corner once, returning a car to the airport in D.C., and I made a right turn on Jefferson Davis Boulevard. What the hell? I can say anything, right? We have a street in Washington, D.C. named after Jefferson. I'm way off track. Reagan Building. The Air and Space Museum. It's got a food court boasting the 2nd busiest McDonald's in the country, behind one of them in Disney World. The Pentagon. Lucila Ramirez worked in Union Station. That's a federal building managed by the Department of Transportation. She keeps the floors and the bathrooms spotless for the millions of people who pass through that station, visiting historic sites that occupy central places in our national history and narrative. She's got 4 kids. The family rents space in their apartment to another person to help make the rent. She's been there 23 years, it's probably 24 or 25 by now. And she makes $8.30 an hour. That's policy violence. I heard that phrase from William Barber, the Moral Mondays movement in in North Carolina. You ought to invite him to come here. He'll tear the roof off this place. Raising the minimum wage is not a serious discussion in Congress, where more than half the members are what? Millionaires. Antonio Vargas was undocumented, worked at the food court in the Reagan building, taking home $6.50 an hour. They just stole his wages. That's right, $6.50 below the federal minimum wage. His employers knew he couldn't do anything about it. He went in and out of that building with a fake ID that fooled no one for 4 years, until he heard about the Good Jobs Nation movement and he joined it, and he found his voice, and he started speaking up for himself and other workers. And they slapped him in a detention center so fast, faster than it takes to fry up some frozen fries. He was here to earn money and send it back to his family in Guatemala. That's policy violence. Kiana Dandridge worked at Potbelly in Union Station, single mother, a 16-month-old child. The day after one of our 9 strikes, I invited her to tell her story to the Washington interreligious staff community. Christians, Muslims, Jews, UUs, secular faith advocates. She came and talked to us with some other workers from the movement. She went back to work that afternoon and was fired, even though she gave them notice that she would be there. That's policy violence. Charles Gladden, a Senate cafeteria worker, working 2 jobs, homeless 5 years before he finally got help stabilizing his housing situation. That's policy violence. More people die from poverty in this country than from heart attacks. 250,000 every year. Policy violence. 2% of the federal budget would eradicate 60% of our poverty. 1% of our population, less than that, about 400,000 people in our nation own 40% of the wealth of our nation. 90% of the rest of us have 25% of the wealth. 400 top CEOs of corporations earn $97,000 an hour. They cry like babies collectively every time there is talk of higher taxes on their piles of money. They don't really cry. They're paid for congressional representatives pitch legislative fits for them. Shut down the government. Refuse to raise the debt ceiling. Cut food stamps. Refuse Medicaid expansion. That's what I get to do in this electronic. Oh, hold on. It's coming back. It's like this tiny now. Hold on. See, you guys are supposed to have 12 inches of snow and a blizzard. I wasn't even going to get here.
We have faith.
All right, I got it. They cut food stamps. They refuse Medicaid expansion. You know something about that right here in this state. They refuse funding for infrastructure improvements that improve our lives and provide jobs. That's policy violence. There's no legislative solution to our immigration problem. I don't say it's broken. It works exactly as they intend. It makes people illegal. It exploits their labor. It fills up detention centers with family members separated from their loved ones, and keeps border guards busy and paid, and provides a market and an arena for military equipment designed for war. That's policy violence. The Senate bill on immigration that never had a chance for consideration, much less passage in the House, would have created a path to citizenship so long and so difficult, very few would have ever completed the journey. It required continuous employment. Anybody out of a job more than 60 days would have been kicked off the path. I've been out of a job for 60 days and I got graduate degrees. It had minimum income requirements, impossible for all but a few to meet. That's policy violence. That bill is dead and gone, and there is nothing else on the table for 12 million people living in shadows, except a new round of deportations. There's another common practice that undermines the work of justice, that makes something like a Black Lives Matter movement necessary, that makes something like a fight for 15 a defining movement of our time. It's not telling the truth in the narrative that we engage in, like this election season, for example. It's deliberately confusing. It's denying reality. It's offering versions of the truth, as if the truth had versions. The dominant narrative is a lie. You know it. We hear it over and over and over again from candidates and politicians, from Fox Entertainment Channel folks. That's what it is. It's not Fox News. Don't even try. It's entertainment. It's all of this entertainment. Propaganda. Right-wing radio personalities blaring nonsense hour after hour of the day and night. You know what they say. There's a legitimate debate to be had about humanity's involvement in global warming. No, there isn't. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Yes, they do kill people. 30,000 a year. The president is a Muslim, was born in Kenya. Or alternatively, we solved our race problem, their word, not mine, because we elected a black president. They can't both be true. There is equal opportunity. The playing field is level. Poor people are poor because they're lazy and they don't work hard enough. Restraining the market is wrong and unfair. Tax breaks for corporations make sense because the economy trickles down. No, it doesn't. The minimum wage suppresses employment and harms small businesses. Employers who play by the rules can't survive. Money is speech. Corporations are people. These are lies. And yet we hear them over and over and over again, as if there's some weight to them, as if they're worthy of our consideration, as if there's something to debate. No, there isn't. We have an immigration problem. We need higher fences, more weapons on the border, more deportations. Poor people are their own worst enemies. Drugs are the problem. Gangs are the problem. Tamir Rice, a 13-year-old boy playing alone in a park with a toy gun in an open carry state, is responsible for his own death. killed in 2 seconds by policemen who warned him twice. The system works. No, it doesn't. These are lies. We can't fix something we don't name in truth. Why don't we prosecute employers who hire undocumented workers? Where's that movement? Why have we made getting a gun easier than casting a vote? We talk about poor people and low-wage workers. Not me anymore. I talk about the made poor and the underpaid workers. People aren't just poor. We make them poor. Our policies, our racism, our deliberate choice to legislate in favor of those already richly privileged. That's what makes people poor. Workers don't simply work in low-wage jobs. They are grossly unpaid for their labor that not only has dignity, but contributes in absolutely essential ways to the wealth created by their work, but reaped by those whose hands never touch the merchandise, the cash register, the mop and pail, the boxes in the warehouse, the grill in the kitchen. Alice Walton of the Walmart Waltons has a second or third or fourth or fifth, I don't know, home on 5th Avenue. Alice Walton wouldn't last a single shift as a Walmart associate. The fight for 15 is as important a movement as any we have seen. This is a true heir to the civil rights movement. Dr. King is smiling from heaven. There are victories along the way. I mentioned Kiana Dandridge earlier, fired after speaking to a meeting of Interfaith advocates. The next day, 100 of us, again, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, people with no professed faith, community activists, 100 of us went to that potbelly at Union Station, demanded to see the manager, made calls to his supervisor, the area director. Later that afternoon, she was reinstated. That's what it takes. Those 9 strikes in 2011 resulted in 2012 of the president in his State of the Union message. Now this is 2012, this is old history now. We move beyond this number. Announcing, though, that any company doing business with the federal government would have to pay their workers a minimum of $10.10 an hour. A step toward where we are today. There are small victories along the way. That movement of federal contract workers, those 9 strikes, the last one in the Pentagon, on the coldest day I've ever experienced in my life. And there is no shelter when you're standing outside the Pentagon. They don't let you get anywhere near that place. But that movement, we used to get 200 people or 300 people. I went back a few months ago. The day the Pope was coming to the Capitol. And 1,000 workers, federal workers, Senate workers, 1,000 of them and their allies and supporters gathered to put pressure on the government to raise the wages of those workers, and they won. So that a typical worker went from $12 an hour to $17 an hour. There are victories. I hate to say this, though. Here's what they did. This is all since the Pope's visit. So whenever that was, you know, everything for me is 2 weeks ago. That's the easy one. Everything's 2 weeks ago. Whenever that was, the victory comes. And I read an article in the Washington Post last week. You know what the employers now are doing? They're calling the workers in one by one, intimidating them, forcing them to sign a document which essentially changes the title of their position. So the cook is now a food service worker. Down comes the salary from 17 to 13. Better than the 12 they were making, but that's like, I'm sorry, evil. Still flipping burgers, the same burgers with a new title, but one that doesn't pay at the higher rate. There is no resting here. We can't take extended breaks. We have to work in shifts to keep up with a machine well-resourced and deeply committed to injustice. There's an apparatus, a structure in our country committed, deeply committed to injustice. It's in our government. $10 billion will be spent this election cycle. Did you hear that? I don't know how many have already been spent, and we haven't even said goodbye to DT yet. You with me, right? I'm not saying it. It's not working. Why are we listening to this meeting? Why is a single sentence of his repeated anywhere, anytime? Has he said anything worth listening to? He sullies our democracy all by himself. Billions of dollars will be spent that could save lives, fund educational opportunities, pay rent, put food in bare cupboards, permit the enjoyment of the abundance of riches that ought to be able and available to all but are hoarded by a few. We can't do this work alone. What is ICWJ going to do about raising the federal minimum wage? You might work at it, but what are you going to do about that? There is no way around the hard work of one-on-one conversations, of basic organizing, of getting to know one another, of inviting allies into the work that is at its foundation about community building. Building beloved community in the midst of a nation that has never fully lived up to the promise of its lofty ideals. Writing a beautiful Constitution and putting in it, some of you are only 2/3 of a human being. Writing that beautiful Declaration of Independence and holding slaves at the same time. We have never fully lived up to the ideals that created this nation. And so that work must continue by people like you in this room and rooms like this all over our country. How do you keep at this? What gives us the strength to stay at it? I'm good friends with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. You know them? Yes. Yes. It's a wonderful organization. I participated in quite a number of their events. And I participated in a 6-day fast with them 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. I never fasted that long. 24 hours is about the most I ever done. I gotta have that chocolate donut. Every day, beginning with a time together to reflect, to pray, to meditate, and the various traditions represented among those, both fasting, the farm workers themselves, and the allies who supported them. Every day, beginning with a discipline, community, of silence, of song. Allies visiting in the afternoon to express support, to tell stories of the work in their own areas. Silent vigils, some nights in front of Publix, department stores, the big bad wolf in the fight for fairness in the tomato picking fields. It's a marvelous community of people who don't just fight together against a common enemy, but who live together in community and who love one another and who know one another intimately. It's the only way we can survive this. It's not just about yelling, marching, demonstrating, and being a vibrant opposition. It's about deepening the ties that bind us together in this one human family. We have to open holy doors for workers, for each other, for young people, for the elderly, for LGBTQ communities still besieged by human opposition. We have to open holy doors for one another, welcoming all into the family, this one human family. We have to put ourselves in one another's shoes, walk the same miles, understand the stories that are not our stories. It's the only way we can sustain one another as we continue this long fight that is still ahead of us, achieving victory after victory after victory. We'll get this done. We'll get this done together.